Hi, my name's Emily Olson. I'm senior editor for Moby Health News here for HIMSS TV. Care outside of the healthcare organization, that's like a big topic during COVID. Can you tell me a little bit about your business and how maybe COVID has changed it and what you guys are really focusing on right now?
Yeah, about our business. So what we do is we have an advanced analytics engine. It's an FDA cleared analytics engine. Simply put, it takes artificial intelligence and machine learning, develops baselines that are tailored to each patient, and then predicts deterioration. So basically, we find out what's normal for a given patient, and when their stats, their vitals deviate from that, we predict that there could be a challenge, and we escalate that. And that could be to our healthcare team, to our clinicians, or to the hospitals. And in COVID, obviously, we've seen an acceleration of a need to have this type of solution. You know, for decades, we've tried to take the home into the hospital and the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
And now what we're trying to do is bring that care back home, and the pandemic has really accelerated that. So what we're seeing in COVID is two things. One, hospitals wanting, and other healthcare organizations, post-acute facilities, wanting to keep their beds free, so when that COVID patient comes in and they are distressed, there is a bed available to them. And we're also seeing hospitals who say, look, for the COVID patient, we want to keep them at home, but we need them to be monitored 24/7. We need to know what's happening with them so that if they do take that turn, we can get to them before they even realize that they need to come to us. And that's really the power of what the analytics engine does. We offer the sensors to be able to monitor the patient as well as all the services to be able to bring up the solution.
So tell me a little bit about that analytics engine that allows you to kind of see what a specific person's biomarkers are and
Sure.
how you can then tell, okay, this person isn't doing okay, now they need some help.
Yeah, no, the analytics engine, so one thing I will say is at our company, we have over 35 data scientists. This is what they do. We've invested for years in building this analytics engine, and we continue to enhance it. But what it does is your baseline will be different than mine, right? Your blood pressure, your heart rate, your respiratory rate. So when a patient starts wearing either the patch or the armband version of the sensor, what happens is it's gathering that data and it's trying to figure out what's normal for you or for me. And then what the BioVitals index is a score that it assigns. It says, okay, 0 is kind of what's normal for you. And then as it's monitoring the patient, one, it's learning about them, right? And it might adjust baseline over time. But what it's doing is triggering a notification to the care team when that index gets greater than 0.3. Simply put, the point is when there's enough deviation from your baseline, it alerts the care team and says, look, there might be something that you want to look at. And then there's another threshold we have which says, look, now there's a problem.
Okay.
So hospitals can decide at what point do they want to know that there's a problem and take action. And either our team, our clinicians, our what we call healthcare navigators, health navigators, can take that action, or the hospital can have that escalated to their own clinical command center.
Gotcha. We talked a little bit about the COVID patients and how that's helpful for them. What other patient populations do you find this kind of model and this remote monitoring is helpful for?
Yeah, there's a number of diagnoses that we can help with, but the three categories that I would put it in, one is just hospital at home. The patient who walks into an ED, they triage that patient. They realize that patient needs to be admitted, but they're not high acuity enough, they're not at risk enough that they need to be in one of our beds or sitting in the ED waiting for an available bed.
Sure.
So that's where they can hand them a kit, send them home with the sensor that they wear and a tablet and maybe some other Bluetooth connected devices. And across a number of diagnoses, they can be monitored at home, right? And if there's an issue, they can come in. Also for the post-acute patient, right? The patient who's in a longer-term facility, maybe there's something that their physician has noticed that requires greater monitoring than just checking in every now and then. They can go home with an armband. They can admit them to their remote patient monitoring program, and in that case, they're being monitored at home. Good example would be a heart failure patient, right? Or heart patient. That's not somebody who, they're living with a condition. They're moving through their life, but we still need to understand what their heart rate is, respiratory rate, blood pressure, and we need to know when those start to signal a problem. So heart failure is one example. Another is think about the patient who has even an endometriosis patient. We had a situation or a customer where what they wanted to do is have a patient-facing application that in that case wasn't even gathering any vitals, but it was getting information from the patient on their pain levels, on the bleeding they were experiencing. It was using that patient engagement to be able to get the context and the insight that a clinician needed to say when is there a challenge or an issue that needs to be addressed with a greater level of care. The other thing I'd mention is with our application, we can enable text with the care team, video calls, voice calls, and so it allows the care teams to check in with patients virtually and determine when they need to come in or go visit them, right?
Wow.
Go out and see them.
So there's a lot of opportunity for providers to kind of determine what they think is like the next most important step there.
Exactly. So even if we did the clinical support, if I use that as an example, even we have 3 levels. So we have health navigators, and what they do, they are not your nurses, right? They're people who are skilled to follow the protocols that are in place, and they know when they need to escalate to a nurse. They're also the people who can reach out to a patient who isn't wearing their monitor as much as they need to be for the armband.
Okay,
And say, can I help you? Is it a technical challenge? Are you just not connected? Did you get far enough away from your device, your mobile device, that you're just not connected? So we have that level. Then we have clinicians who, again, they can escalate to our clinicians who reach out and can help adjust care if needed, get more contextual information, and then finally advanced practitioners as well. Now, of course, the hospital can take on any or all of those roles as well, but we have teams who are available to be able to help.
It's interesting. In a way, it kind of helps people work at kind of the top of their license so that you can make sure that like the nurse isn't reminding someone to, hey, please keep your monitor on. It's like allows to spread that workload out.
Right. How often do we hear nurses, as an example, say the amount of time that they're spending not in direct patient care, right, is just a lot higher than it needs to be. And we want to make sure that they can work at the top of their license. The other thing is they can see more patients. So the experience that we want a clinician to have is you're sitting down in front of your EMR, right, or in front of your patients in a hospital, and you have a certain number of beds that you're managing there. And then you have patients in virtual beds as well. So now as a nurse, I can take care of a greater number of people and still feel like I'm watching patients who aren't in front of me, and I'll know when there's a problem, right? It gives them the confidence, it gives patients confidence that someone's watching over me. Right, they're going to know when there's a problem.
Yeah, over the past year, there's been a lot of discussion about provider burnout, especially during COVID, because so many, taking care of so many more patients.
Absolutely.
Do you kind of see this as a solution in some ways to provider burnout and workload?
We do, because on one hand, I'm telling you, look, you're going to have many more patients.
Yeah.
But the reason that's not contributing to burnout is you have the confidence that we are monitoring those patients for you, and the hospital or those providers have defined what safe looks like. So even without looking at them, you're going to be notified when somebody has a problem. Think about a regular hospital environment, right? A clinician is rounding every hour, maybe every 2 hours at night, whether there's a problem or not, right? They are rounding. In between those times, they don't know if there's a problem. So 2 things are happening. One, they're not having to round every hour on these virtual patients. But number 2, even when they're not seeing into the room, they know they're going to get a notification when there's a problem. So we're trying to actually make it easier for them to take care of more patients by only telling them the information that they need to know and not overloading them with physical activity or other actions that they need to take.
Yeah. How soon do you think solutions like this will become completely mainstream, or do you think they're going mainstream now?
That's a great question. I don't think we're at the point of mainstream, and it's not because the technology isn't there. I think it's a complete shift that we're making in healthcare. And so if you think about the general patient population, right now we have to get people shifted away from, if I walk into an ED, if I take my dad into an ED and he has a problem and they say, listen, we're just going to give you this kit, here's a box, I'm going to show you how to put on your monitor and go home. I, as somebody who works in healthcare, understand that that's actually more coverage, more care than potentially him sitting in the ED waiting for a bed.
Yeah.
But the average person still has to make that shift of, wait, this is actually care that's more valuable potentially than being in the hospital bed and not being high acuity or high risk enough for a nurse to be there with me all the time, right? How many times as family members have we been in the hospital and you leave the room to go, hey, is someone going to come see my family? So I think there's a mental shift that has to happen for people to appreciate that not only is this valuable, but what they should expect. So I do think, maybe it's too long term, we'll see this shift over time, but within a couple of decades, I think we're going to have an expectation where we say care should come to us. But I think it takes time to shift mindsets.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much for taking the time with talking with me today.
Thank you.
All right. My name is Emily Olson. I'm a senior editor for Moby Health News here for HIMSS TV. Thank you so much for watching.